History is rarely decided by chance. More often, it is forged at the collision point of geography, ambition, and technology. In the scorching summer of 712 Common Era, the geopolitical balance between the Middle East and South Asia hung precariously on a single, heavily fortified crown jewel, the port city of Debal. To the casual merchant, Debal was a paradise of commerce, a sprawling, wealthy metropolis nestled near the mouth of the Indus River, bursting with silk, spices, and precious stones. But to the military strategist, Debal was something far more formidable. It was an iron wall. It was the maritime gateway and the ultimate defensive shield, protecting Raja Dahir's powerful Brahmin dynasty. For centuries, the rulers of Sindh believed these coastal walls were utterly unbreakable. They believed the sea protected them, and that no invading force from the west could ever breach their sanctuary. They were wrong.
The Umayyad Caliphate knew that a conventional assault on Debal would be an absolute bloodbath. A standard infantry siege against walls of this magnitude could drag on for months, depleting supplies and leaving the invading army vulnerable to disease and scorched earth countertactics from Raja Dahir's inland forces. To conquer Sindh, they needed something beyond raw numbers. They needed revolutionary military engineering. The man tasked with this monumental campaign was shockingly young, a 17-year-old general named Muhammad bin Qasim. Though youthful, bin Qasim possessed a cold, meticulous analytical mind. He understood that medieval warfare was evolving. He brought with him a highly disciplined force of elite Syrian horsemen, specialized camel corps, and a massive baggage train. But his secret weapon did not ride on horseback. It arrived disassembled, packed tightly into the holds of heavy cargo ships that had sailed alongside the infantry. A weapon designed to systematically tear down the ancient world.
This was the heavy manjanik, a terrifying state-of-the-art counterweight catapult. This specific engine of war was so massive, so imposing, that the engineers gave it a name, Al-Arus, which translates from Arabic as the bride. Al-Arus was not a weapon built for generic bombardment. It was an instrument of absolute precision. Operating this single machine required a crew of 500 highly trained men, pulling in synchronized harmony to anchor the frame and manipulate the firing lines. Up until this specific moment in South Asian history, static stone fortifications were considered the ultimate military guarantee. If your walls were high enough and thick enough, you could outlast any foe. But Al-Arus changed the equation of siege warfare entirely. It brought the concept of industrial-scale, long-range kinetic destruction to the gates of Sindh.
Muhammad bin Qasim did not waste ammunition blindly battering the outer walls. His engineers targeted the city's psychological, spiritual, and physical anchor, the central temple tower. When the perfectly aimed boulder from Al-Arus brought the great red banner crashing into the dirt, a profound psychological shockwave ripped through the defenders of Debal. To the citizens inside, the fall of the sacred flag was interpreted as a terrifying omen of divine abandonment. Panic spread through the streets like wildfire. The structural integrity of the city's defenses was broken, but its will to fight was shattered even faster. Within days, the seemingly impregnable walls of Debal were breached, and the gates were thrown open. By capturing this single port, the young general had achieved a massive strategic masterstroke. Look closely at the map. Debal was the economic lungs of Raja Dahir's kingdom. By seizing it, the Umayyads effectively severed the Brahmin dynasty from the maritime trade routes of the Indian Ocean. In a matter of weeks, Dahir's northern armies were completely isolated from potential reinforcement, cash reserves, and foreign supply chains. The siege of Debal was over, but the far more complex challenge was about to begin.
When we look back across 13 centuries of dust and conflict, we must ask a fundamental historical question.
how do we actually know the intimate, granular details of this campaign? How do we separate historical reality from later political myth? Our primary window into this world is a remarkable text known as the Chachnama. Originally compiled from early Arabic military logs and later translated into elegant Persian, the Chachnama is far more than a simple chronicle of victories. It is a deeply complex, nuanced literary work that balances epic narrative with cold political record. It does not just tell us who fought whom, it provides an invaluable, intimate look into the internal mindsets, fears, and strategic calculations of both the Umayyad conquerors and the indigenous population of Sindh. It is a text that forces us to challenge long-held assumptions about medieval conquest. Popular historical imagination often paints early medieval expansions as scenes of unmitigated catastrophe, conquests defined solely by the wholesale slaughter of populations and the total leveling of cities. But the pages of the Chachnama paint a drastically different, far more intriguing reality. According to the text, the surrender of Debal was not followed by systematic annihilation. Instead, the moment the active military resistance ceased, a highly structured, bureaucratic process began. The Chachnama meticulously documents a series of intense, face-to-face negotiations. We see the young Muhammad bin Qasim and his senior advisors hammering out formal, legalistic surrender terms with the local urban leadership, the wealthy mercantile guilds, and the civic administrators of the city. These were treaties designed to establish a new order, not to destroy the existing one. This reality forces modern students of history to pause and analyze the core motivations of the empire. Why would an invading army, fresh off a hard-fought military victory, opt for a negotiated, highly structured settlement rather than asserting total, destructive dominance? The answer is found not in modern morality, but in ancient economic pragmatism. The Umayyad Caliphate did not cross deserts and oceans to rule over a landscape of ash and ghosts. They were representatives of a highly sophisticated, revenue-driven empire. Debal was a lucrative, finely tuned machine of international trade. If you destroy the docks, slaughter the merchants, and scare away the international shipping fleets, you permanently destroy the very wealth you set out to acquire. To fund the expansion of the empire, the infrastructure of the port had to remain fully functional. Wealth creation required stability, and stability required negotiation. Commerce, not cruelty, dictated the terms of the peace.
With the coastal gateway of Debal firmly under control and generating revenue, Muhammad bin Qasim wastes no time. He marched his forces deeper inland, following the geographic lifeblood of the entire region, the mighty Indus River. But any seasoned conqueror will tell you that winning a war is easy compared to the grueling, mundane task of managing a conquered territory. As the Umayyads advanced, they faced an immediate, monumental challenge. How do you govern a vast, highly populated agrarian landscape whose traditions, languages, and social structures are completely foreign to your own? The answer lay in a sophisticated administrative architecture. The Umayyads did not attempt to completely reinvent the wheel. Instead, they anchored their new governance framework around a standardized, highly regulated agricultural land tax known as the Kharaj.
The implementation of the Kharaj provides us with a fascinating case study in imperial pragmatism. Instead of purging the defeated regime's civil service, the Umayyad command made a brilliant, highly calculated decision. They completely co-opted the existing Brahmin bureaucratic and administrative class. Think about the sheer brilliance of this strategy. The local Brahmin scribes and tax collectors already knew the land. They spoke the local dialects, they knew exactly who owned which field, they understood the seasonal crop yields, and they held the existing tax registries. By keeping these familiar local officials in their positions, the Umayyads ensured that the transition from the old dynasty to the caliphate caused virtually zero disruption to the delicate, highly seasonal agricultural cycles of the Indus Valley.
The farmers in the fields saw the exact same tax collectors they had seen for decades. The language of the ledger book stayed the same. Only the ultimate destination of the wealth had shifted.
To understand why this system was necessary, we must grasp the brutal logistical realities of the 8th century. In an era where information could only travel as fast as a horse could gallop or a ship could sail, direct centralized management from the imperial capital of Damascus was a physical impossibility. A crisis in Sindh would be weeks old before a message could even reach the caliph. To solve this dilemma, the Umayyads utilized an early iteration of the Iqta system, a mechanism of decentralized governance where the state granted specific land revenue assignments directly to military commanders stationed in the province. Instead of collecting taxes, sending them all the way to Damascus, and waiting for the capital to send back payroll for the troops, the local commanders collected the Kharaj locally to maintain their regiments and fund local infrastructure. This layout provided a self-sustaining, highly responsive military presence. It guaranteed that the army remained well-funded and loyal, while simultaneously ensuring that governance remained local, stable, and completely insulated from widespread social unrest.
The violent, earth-shattering fall of Debal, the sophisticated legal treaties recorded in the Chachnama, and the seamless integration of the Kharaj and Iqta systems did not happen in a vacuum. Together, they coalesced into a profound historical precedent that scholars refer to as the Sindh Model. The Sindh Model was an entirely new blueprint for imperial expansion. It was a strategy predicated on two seemingly contradictory but masterfully balanced forces: terrifying, uncompromising military precision on the battlefield, followed immediately by absolute, clear-headed fiscal pragmatism in peace. The Umayyads proved that an empire did not need to culturally erase or physically destroy a civilization to govern it successfully.
By integrating the pre-existing economic, bureaucratic, and social structures of South Asia into the wider administrative machinery of the Caliphate, the Umayyads did something extraordinary. They secured a permanent, deeply rooted, and remarkably stable foothold in the subcontinent. For students, historians, and scholars today, this specific sequence of events, the siege, the negotiated settlement, and the administrative integration, serves as an invaluable case study. It reveals the complex, brilliant reality of how early Islamic states successfully navigated, respected, and ultimately governed the diverse, deeply established, and ancient civilizations they inherited. The template forged at Debal would echo through the governance of the subcontinent for centuries to come.